Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Canada once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys are another relatively new addition to the Canadian beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But I have noticed that they've been releasing some different styles in recent times, so we'll need to try and review some of those for you on the channel going forward. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of this brewery's latest releases here in Hong Kong. It's a style that I've tried from the brewery before, but if memory serves me correctly, I haven't tried this particular sub-style, so we'll need to see how that turns out. But the style itself is one that I know they can do very well. I've heard very good things about this beer, so yeah, very curious to try this one. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to Canada like I said. We're going to go to the province of Ontario. We're going to go to a little place called Glen, Robertson, which is to the kind of southeast of Ottawa and also out to the west of Montreal over in Quebec, which is actually closer from what I gather, but that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Wood Brothers Brewery. So this particular beer is called Third Cut. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is another beer that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer in Tsim Sha Tsui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, who always get a great selection of Wood Brothers whenever they appear through the importers here in Hong Kong. But we seem to get a fairly steady stream of Canadian stuff, which I'm very happy about. We've got Willowbald, Third Moon, Wood Brothers, a couple of others as well actually, which is really nice to see. It's nice to encounter Canadian beer quite steadily after quite some time of wondering when I was ever going to be able to review some of the Canadian stuff. So I'm very happy that we get Wood Brothers. These guys are one of the kind of new wave of Canadian hazy breweries, as I would call them, that are emerging now. But if you want to learn more about the Canadian beer scene, of course, do check out my good friend Lee Russell, one of the OG beer tubers as well. He's been around way longer than me actually. But yeah, there are other guys like Off the 10th, Redbeard and that as well, who are reviewing the Canadian beers. So if you're interested in the Canadian beer scene particularly, do make sure you check out those guys. I'll try to remember to put the link to some of their channels in the video description for you below. But yeah, Wood Brothers Third Cut, 10% New England Hazy Imperial Triple, if you want to call it IPA. Let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Wood Brothers before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Canadian playlist along with a number of other things, and that is of course being added to fairly regularly, because we do get a good stream of Canadian beer here in Hong Kong. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go into my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Wood Brothers Brewery once again then. So, Wood Brothers Brewery, as I mentioned to you earlier on, are based in Glen, Robertson in Ontario over in Canada, and this is to the southeast of Ottawa, the Canadian capital, but also to the west of Montreal over in Quebec, which is actually a little bit closer. So the Wood Brothers project started back in 2017, but the company officially opened their doors in 2019, and the main people behind it are Mark and Natasha Rickard, Louis Castonguay, Dan Whitehead, and also Kurt McSwain. So Mark and Natasha are serial entrepreneurs, and they own White Pine Lumber, which is a furniture company but also offers various different wood services. Mark also has his own design company as well. Kurt is a farmer and he runs a company called Dalgara Farms, and his family have been farming this land for about 4 generations in North Glengarry. They're actually producing different hops that are now used in the Wood Brothers beers as well, which is very cool. And then Dan and Louis were involved at La Brosse Brewery in Pontclair over in Montreal, and they've also got their own beer brand called Gravedigging Bros as well, which you can follow on Instagram. But all of the founders apparently kept their original day jobs when they started the company, but I believe they've become more involved now basically, and quite a few of them are full-time with Wood Brothers Brewery. But prior to the official opening, these guys had apparently brewed 150 batches to perfect a few of their recipes for the major release, and these went down very, very well. But the brewery itself is based on a 65-acre farm, and they tapped their first keg in spring of 2019, and over the years they've been building up the brewery's infrastructure, which included adding a new brew house in 2020, and they've apparently tripled their production capacity in size since their foundation. They've got a tap room at the brewery as well, which opens on Fridays and Saturdays, and as of January 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 620 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I mentioned to you earlier, they're definitely best known for the different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But definitely cool that they're producing quite a little bit of their own ingredients themselves, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues with this brewery going forward. I know Willibald were another one that I encountered from Canada who are doing this kind of thing, and they seem to be making quite a success of it, doing stuff for their own spirits as well at Willibald, which is quite interesting. So yeah, very interesting things happening in that east southern part of Canada between Quebec and Ontario, of course. Lots of nice breweries and distilleries and stuff opening up there from what I gather. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Wood Brothers Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a look at the beer itself. So the artwork on this one, compared to some of the other ones we've had from Wood Brothers, is pretty similar. They tend to release a lot of their beers with the different kind of hop flower artwork on this one. You can see it's just a plain black band on this particular beer. So yeah, the Wood Brothers artwork is pretty distinctive but also pretty similar. You can see plain silver top on the can there. This one is 473 milliliters, which is 1 American pint or 16 fluid ounces if you want to use the Freedom Units system, as I call it. But yeah, where the label is distinctive is this bit here, third cut, and then yeah, drink fresh. So the hops in this beer are apparently Citra from the US, and then Galaxy and Victoria's Secret from Australia. Citra we know very, very well, of course, 14% alpha acid. It gives you a lovely little bit of peach, sometimes some grapefruit as well, big juicy mango, and in a New England hazy IPA it's going to give you quite a little bit of lemon and lime, whereas Galaxy and Victoria's Secret are related, if you like. If I remember rightly, Galaxy is a daughter of Victoria's Secret, but both of those hops are going to give you 14% alpha acid. Victoria's Secret is going to give you quite a lot of like pineapple and apricot notes from what I remember, whereas Galaxy is going to give you a little bit more potent kind of grapefruit, peach, passion fruit and pineapple. So yeah, quite interesting hops, I have to say. I do like both Victoria's Secret and Galaxy. I didn't think Victoria's Secret was quite as high in alpha acid as Galaxy was. I thought it was a little bit less. But yeah, apparently when I looked it up before the video, Galaxy has that 14% alpha acid. So yeah, a nice mix of American and Australian hops in this one. We'll just need to see how it turns out. But like I say, third cut, 10% New England Hazy Imperial Triple IPA. This one was canned on the 17th of October 2024. So at the time of filming this one, I'm drinking this beer when it's about 2 months old. So not at its absolute freshest. I have actually had this one in the fridge. I got it, I think, at the start of December or so, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe a little bit earlier than that. So the fact that it's not as fresh is my fault, but it'll be interesting to try this one when it's got just that little bit of time on it and see how it turns out. So yeah, let's get it out into the glass then and see how we go. I'm really, really curious about this one. Oh, it got a little bit excited just as I opened it there. We got a little bit of foam, so we'll just need to see. But yeah, I have been very impressed with the IPAs I've had from Wood Brothers so far. So yeah, these guys are doing some very, very good stuff, particularly if you're interested in the New England Hazy IPA style. When I've poured this one, we've got about 80% of the beer out and into the can. You can see, yeah, the carbonation on this one was starting to build up because you can just look at the makeup of the head there. So when we've poured the beer, it's come out with about a finger of quite a bumpy, I would say, kind of cream coloured head there. You've got the foamier bubbles, or the smaller bubbles sitting toward the surface of the liquid there, and yeah, it just gets a little bit more soapy the further up that you go. But colour wise, this one is a really quite deep yellow, like a sort of mango juice colour. I always like comparing the appearance of different New England IPAs to fruit juices, because that's really just what they remind me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPAs. I'll say the head on this one is just fading away to give you a nice kind of thinner foamy layer around the edge of the glass there. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, I would add as well. But yeah, the level of haze in this one, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest of triple IPAs that I've come across, but it does have a good little bit of opacity to it. And remember, the opacity and haze in the New England IPAs depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. So yeah, that can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer. So yeah, this is quite an interesting looking one. I like the richness of the colour in this, I have to say. But I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer, so let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma then, and just see how we get on. I'm very curious about this. Okay. Very soft, very kind of wet and juicy aroma coming off of this one. Yeah, you've got quite a nice, there's quite a zesty green component coming out of the beer, and the fruit in this one obviously is leaning to be very, very tropical as well. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with the malt base. So as I've often said, when it comes to New England IPAs, for me, there are 6 elements to think about with these beers when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of things. You've got the kind of farmhousey and yeasty character, and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in the New England brewed New England IPAs. But as the style has evolved and moved to other places, the focus has been a little bit more on the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. For me, it's a little bit difficult in this one to pick up exactly where this beer lies, in a sense. It comes across a wee bit, there's quite a little bit of yeasty and bread crusty character to it, but the aroma is really quite tame almost. It's very yeah, it's got more of a kind of yeasty and grainy character to it, this one. But yeah, the more that I smell of it, I'm getting a fair little bit of the oat, and the oats come across as being quite wet and porridgey, and the wheat is given a little bit of bitiness, which I think is quite interesting as well. Yeah, but it really does not have the most pungent of aromas, this beer, I have to say, which is quite interesting. I remember the other Wood Brothers ones being really quite, almost punchy in a sense, but I do also remember their beers being quite well balanced in a way. So yeah, let's just try and break down the aroma of this one then, and describe it for you more in depth. But what I will say about this beer is that the fruity side of it is very, very tropical leaning. Yeah, so for me, the fruity side of this beer kind of stands out more and more the more that you smell of it. But yeah, the malty side of things then, the backbone of the beer, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. The way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. So yeah, fresh, white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. You've got a nice little bit of, yeah, you do have a nice little bit of like cream cracker in there as well. Also a little bit of woodiness, but not very much in honesty. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust, a little bit of woody, a little bit of crackery character. Wee touch, I'm getting more and more, there's a wee touch of brown bread initially, but I get more and more of it the more that I smell of this beer. But then above that, of course, you're getting the nice white bready characteristics coming out of it. Yeah, there's some nice white bready notes in there. You've got a more yeah, there's a nice kind of more, like you get the fluffy white bread from the barley malt in this one, but you also get a more dense wheaty white bready character. And the oaty notes in this are quite interesting because they're actually very, very dense and almost very creamy. As I've often said before, European wheat for me is a little bit more bitey, whereas North American wheat is a bit more kind of smooth, and then European oats are a bit more creamy, whereas North American oats are a little bit more porridgey. The oaty character in this one's quite interesting because it's both a little bit creamy and also a little bit more sort of porridgey, if you like. So yeah, the way that pieces together in this one, I think, is really quite nice too. So yeah, lovely kind of oaty, creamy sort of notes in there. Yeah, I do like that in this beer. The oats actually, I do wonder if there's a little touch of like acidulated malt or something in this one because it's just got that wee citricy character in the top of the nose. But yeah, there's a wee bit of like Werther's original butter candy, butterscotch in this one, although I wouldn't say that the beer is overly sweet. Actually, it could be the addition of brew sugar that's doing that, and that's quite common in New England triples and New England quadruple IPAs. They'll add a little bit of sugar into these to get the ABV up. But yeah, the yeasty side of things in this one, at the back of the nose, is quite interesting. It's got a little bit of brown bready character, but it's also quite white bready and kind of crackery as well at the same time. So a good mix of things going on in there. But yeah, all in all, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting. It actually reminds me of some of the old Magic Rock beers like Cannonball and stuff like that, with this slightly acidulated note that it has. But then again, the more that I smell of it, the more it kind of makes me think that's the oat that's doing that. But yeah, anyway, in terms of the green component in this one, the green component actually has quite a little bit of zestiness to it in a sense. There's a teeny bit of earthiness in there, but lots of floral character and lots of kind of zesty grassiness. And you have to remember that with IPAs, you have three types of hoppings that you can use. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness and a deep dank green component in terms of flavour and aroma. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil, gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and that one is yeah, that's more about how would you say, that one is a little bit more about, yeah, flavour. It's very kind of smooth. It gives you that kind of nice juicy fruity quality, of course. But yeah, when it comes to New England hazy IPAs, these rely mainly on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're kind of softer and more juicy. West Coast IPAs tend to use all three types of hopping, which is why they're deeper, danker, and more kind of oily in that sense. The brightness of the green component in this one is really apparent. I think just going by the aroma, I think there's a mix of pellets in this. I think it's mainly pellets that's been used in this one because the green component just has that little bit more pungency to it. But I think there's also a wee bit of cryo or incognito in here because there's a wee touch of like oily smoothness to it. But if you know the three hops in this one, the Citra, the Galaxy, and the Victoria's Secret, it's really doing what you'd expect. It's got quite a pungent tropical citrus character to it, this one. There's lots of peach in there. I'm getting that little tiny hint of like grapefruit, but peach is the most prominent, sharper aroma that's coming out of this particular beer. But yeah, lots and lots of juicy, very ripe mango in this one. Maybe a little bit of guava. I'd maybe even go as far as saying that it's guava in there because it really has that kind of green tropical note to it. For me, that's always guava. So yeah, peach, guava, very ripe, juicy mango. You get softer passion fruit in there. Apricots for sure. And then yeah, there's a wee bit of like I do get a little bit of an almost kind of lychee sort of spiciness at the front of the nose too, and that's going to be the Citra that's going to give you that in this one. But the pineapple, the juicier pineapple comes out of it later as well. But all in all, aroma wise, the aroma of this beer is pretty interesting and quite different from the other Wood Brothers that I've had before, and from the other New England hazies that I've had in recent times as well. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma of this one. But as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But I do think it's time that we try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the third cut, a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Wood Brothers Brewery in Glen, Robertson, Ontario, over in Canada. I'm very curious about this. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's nice. Yeah, this is interesting for me. There we go, getting a little bit more haze out of this one now. I just saw that coming in. This one must have kind of sedimented a good little bit, because you can see that's got even more hazy. Because on first impression, this one, it had a little bit of a kind of grainy farmhousey type note to it. But let's just try it again. Oh yeah. So now that we've got the sediment into this one, it's got a little bit more kind of brightness and sweetness to the bready character, that's for sure. Yeah, maybe I need to get an American pint-sized glass for a kind of goblet glass for these reviews. But yeah, this one, another really nice New England IPA from these guys. Overall, quite smooth and creamy and oaty, but there's quite a wheaty presence to this one as well. But it does show you a good little bit of yeasty character also. So yeah, I really like how this one pieces together, in fact. So let's just break the flavour of this beer down then and describe it for you a bit more in depth. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. That's the backbone of your beer. As you move further forward on the middle third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of woodiness in there, and then you've got Jacob's cream cracker on top of that. I would say that into the aftertaste, it actually comes across as more of like a kind of brown bready bread crust. The beer actually gets that little bit greenier, but yeah, woody character in there, Jacob's cream cracker. Then above that, you've got a kind of wholemeal brown bready note, which I have to say I didn't really expect based on the aroma. And then yeah, so you've got the brown bready kind of character in there. You've got the kind of fluffier white bready character as well from the barley malt. It's got a wee touch of like sweetness to it, but at the same time a little bit more dryness. Yeah. Now, as I say, the nice kind of white bready note in there. It's got a good little bit of like, yeah, it's got that more dense white bready character to it, which I think is, well, the softer white bready note from the barley malt, which has a wee touch of sweetness but also a bit of dryness. Then you've got the more dense wheaty white bready character coming out of it, which again, it even has a little bit of sweetness in there. And then above everything else, you've got the oaty notes. And I think the oats actually take a bit of a back seat in the flavour compared to the wheat. The more I drink of this one, the more wheat I get out of it. So yeah, you've got that really dense white bready wheaty character in there, which has a wee bit of bitiness. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of bitiness in there, but then yeah, further forward, you've got a nice little bit of yeah, you've got a little bit more of a kind of creamy and smooth sort of character coming out of the beer, which I think is quite nice. So yeah, the wheat is very smooth toward the front of that middle third of your palate, and then above the wheat you get the kind of oaty layer out of this one. So you've got that more creamy oaty character just going down the yeah, you've got the more kind of creamy oaty character going down the middle line of your palate there, and the kind of middle dip, if you can call it that. And as you move out toward the edges of the palate, it's got a little bit more of that kind of oaty dryness in there. So I've often said oats tend to be a relatively decent indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is, because the creamier they are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. So this beer is showing you the kind of creaminess in the middle of the palate, but then a wee bit of dryness toward the edge there. And this one is at 2 months old, kind of starting to show some of that dryness. So that's quite interesting as well. So nice kind of smooth and almost slightly wheat, you know, almost slightly sweet, wheaty white bready character. Then yeah, you've got the oats sitting above that, which have a bit of creaminess and a little bit of dryness. But in the dead centre of your palate, you've got that little circle there where you've got the kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy notes coming out of it, and that's the alcohol in the beer, of course. And as you move out toward the edges of the palate there, this is sitting on top of the oats, you start to get that wee bit of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of character. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, it's really interesting actually how all of that goes together. But I think that covers the middle third of your palate in this one fairly well. Let's go to the back third of the palate then. So as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to show you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate in there, you've got a little bit of brown bread in the base, the kind of barley malt white bread in the middle, then the wheaty character on top. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate is the bread crust, definitely more kind of brown bready there and drier, of course. The cracker sits above that. The brown bready layer is a lot more kind of, it's a lot lighter and more taller and more airy. Then above that you've got the white bready layer, which again is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then you've got the more dense wheaty white bready character sitting on top of that, which has a bit more of a kind of bitiness to it on that back third of your palate. Then it's all about the kind of yeasty side of things in this one. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that yeasty character then. So yeah, yeasty side of this beer for me, at its core, it's got like, it's more of a kind of sweet white bready character, and as you move further out from it, it's quite dense, but yeah, as you move further out from that, it's got more of a kind of sweet brown bready character. Then it's surrounded by a little bit of yeah, it's surrounded by more of a kind of, yeah, surrounded by more of a kind of brown bready bread crust actually, which is quite nice. And that brown bready bread crust gives you a wee bit of dryness there. But yeah, the yeasty character, the overall malty and yeasty note going into the aftertaste there is like a kind of bready, a brown bready sweetness actually. And definitely, yeah, back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, quite interesting actually. But let's go on to the hoppy side of things for the beer then, just to round off the tasting. So green component on this one is actually quite smooth. I think there's a bit of incognito or cryo in here, but it's also got a nice little bit of dryness too. But definitely, yeah, back corners of the palate you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of herbal quality, but then yeah, as you come further forward from that, there's a wee tiny bit of pine resin underneath, which is probably going to be the Citra and the Galaxy that give you that. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, there's nice floral aromaticity on the front corners of the tongue, a little bit spicy, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's that bit lighter It's a bit more kind of light, grassy, and sort of slightly zesty in a sense as well. So yeah, I do like how that how all of that pieces together in this one. On the fruity side of things then, so for me, fruity side of this beer, front third of your palate. The border region between front and middle third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there again. You've got the nice brown bready character in there, the kind of white bready notes on top, and then the more dense wheaty white bready character in there. The base of the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of kind of white bready bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, kind of wholemeal brown bread, the kind of barley malt white bread, and the more dense wheaty white bread as well. And then above that, you've got a nice kind of you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that kind of fruity side of things then. I will say as well, the fruity side of this beer is a little bit more oily, but with this beer being higher in terms of its ABV at 10%, that's kind of to be expected. But I will say that if you know these hops, it's kind of doing what you'd expect. So at the back of that fruity bubble, you've definitely got that little tiny touch of grapefruit there, which is going to come from the Citra and the Galaxy, but it's not overpowering, if you like. So there's a little touch of grapefruit there. As you move further forward from that, you've got a nice bit of sharper peach. Underneath, lots of juicy mango. And as you reach the middle of that, as you reach the middle of that front third of your tongue, it's you've got lots of juicy mango in there. You've got some drier apricot underneath. You've also got the kind of more pineapple-y note on top. And as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it almost becomes a little bit more oily and kind of peary in a sense. But there's a wee touch of like gooseberry and sort of, there's a wee touch of gooseberry in there, and a wee bit of a more kind of lemony limey note on the front tip of the tongue. But the lemony limey character takes a back seat to the more tropical notes, and also the kind of oily peary character as well. Maybe a little touch of lychee, that kind of little spicy kind of lychee note in there, which will be from the Citra as well. So yeah, really a tropical leaning note in terms of the fruitiness of this beer, which you'd expect when you consider the hops involved. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section of this video. So let's round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer overall, it's quite an oily New England IPA. I would say it does give you a wee bit of dryness into the aftertaste, but overall, yeah, quite an oily New England IPA. It leans toward, yeah, it really leans toward being like the bottom end of full-bodied for me. Smooth carbonation, although it does have a wee bit of a prickle to it. The IBU, there's a mix of dryness in this one, which obviously could be conflated with bitterness and a wee bit of, and the actual hoppy bitterness. I want to say this was maybe about 50 IBUs, because it does give you a wee bit of lingering bitterness there. The malty character of the beer is more kind of grainy in the base, smoother in the middle, and a bit more creamy and sweet on top. Then yeah, you've got that more kind of juicy, fruity note coming out of it as well. And the juicy, fruity notes are more oily and kind of tropically, I would say. So yeah, the way everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. So I'm not sure there's too much else to say about it. It's one of the more oily New England IPAs that I've had from Wood Brothers. I can't remember how this one compares in terms of ABV to the other ones that I've had from these guys, but the other ones were a bit more kind of creamy and oaty, whereas this is a more oily kind of offering, I would say, but still very, very good, as we've come to expect from Wood Brothers. It does give you a wee bit of a kind of yeasty and grainy character into the aftertaste too. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the third cup, a New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, Citra, Galaxy and Victoria's Secret from Wood Brothers and Glen Robertson in Ontario over in Canada. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Wood Brothers Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out Wood Brothers social media as well, and do check out some of my Canadian beer tubing colleagues. But until the next time, Slàinte Skål, cheers, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao just now.